Joe is an eminent and influential, highly regarded motorsport identity, probably of the past, but there are still enough people around to know what Joe achieved during his time, and we'd like to hear about it from the horse's mouth. Joe, would you like to come up, please? I'm assured that both microphones work. Joe's assistant here is Larry Kavanagh, the owner of Saggy Sherry, which Joe will give us a little bit of a rundown on. Over here, Joe. Where's the camera? Oh, down. Right there. Grab hold of that. Yes. No. Sit down right here.
Sit down before you fall over. Hang on.
Just explain about the rules. I'm sure you've done a fair bit of public speaking. It's on, doesn't have to have
It's on?
Yeah. And you've got to speak with it being
In here?
horizontal.
How's that?
That's it, that's fine.
I've done a little bit of public speaking.
Yes, I think you're even more famous than me. In fact, some people have heard of you. Joe at one time in his life was known as the muscle man, but that's got nothing to do with how many push-ups he could do. He had a position of influence with General Motors in regard to the clandestine support of Holden races. And he's not a bad bloke either.
Thank you.
Can you confirm that, Joe?
Yeah, I'm great.
Excellent. Born in Malta, but grew up in Australia. In Melbourne, was that?
Yeah, my family lived in Melbourne, but I've lived all over the place.
You've gone where the grass has been greener.
Well, where I got sent.
Qualified as an engineer before joining General Motors, and then they liked you so much they sent you overseas.
Oh, yeah, I finished up overseas for a couple of stints.
To study?
Yeah, I was at Catherine University in Flint, Michigan, doing another degree. General Motors used to like their managers to have two degrees.
Oh, right. So one was in engineering, the other one was in rat cunning. And telling lies to the management.
No, the other one actually was in automotive management. So
Okay.
how to run a dealership. I think they were giving me a message to get out and go to a dealership.
General Motors had a policy at the time worldwide that they had no interest in motor racing.
True. That there was some of you may remember way back, there was a real bad accident that one of the General Motors cars went over into the crowd and hit a whole lot of people. So the company brought in a worldwide policy of no circuit racing. We could rally and rally cross and hill climb, but we weren't allowed to circuit race.
Okay, so you got around that.
We had to get around it, yeah.
So that meant doing some things that the management perhaps didn't know about. Certainly US didn't know about.
Well, the US didn't. Well, look, it was all nudge, nudge, wink, wink, because the auditors used to come out and we had enough influence to only let them send out American auditors that were motor racing people. So, and I'll tell you a funny little story one time. Two guys turned up from the States and they were from Detroit. Excuse my voice, I've got a bit of like the other gentleman said, I've got a bit of a cold. And all of a sudden they came up and John Bagshaw, who was my boss, said, oh, we've got some guys here who want to see the Harry Firth operation. Now, supposedly that didn't exist. So I've rung Harry quickly and said, Harry, for Christ's sake, I've got two auditors here. Now, make sure you've got all the cars, with the right stickers and everything else. I get down there and half the cars have got Alpine Rally stickers on it. They're supposed to be getting ready for Bathurst. So you can imagine what was going on.
You also that they say you had access to the checkbook at General Motors, so you were there were people that were dependent on you for their motorsport activities.
Well, let's put it this way, my position, I was Holden's manager of motorsport, and as that I approved the invoices. And then they went to finance department and finance paid them, so I guess if I didn't approve them, they wouldn't get paid until they argued about it, so yes, I did have the checkbook, but I couldn't write out a cheque for a new car for me or a holiday to Italy or something. But
So you were the guy chick of General Motors holiday.
true.
Yeah, treasurer. Right, so who got support from you in this clandestine operation?
Okay, well, obviously the Holden dealer team, we started up the Holden dealer team, and that was our factory team. Plus we had about 10 privateers. We had Jim Richards, Alan Grice, who else? Peter Jansen, Bob Forbes.
Dick Johnson?
Dick Johnson when he was running Tiranas, before he went to Ford. He went to the dark side. So, you know, we had about 10 privateers, and I mean, we weren't stupid enough to think that our cars are always going to win. I mean, we won 9 Bathursts, but apart from that, the fact is our cars used to break down. And by looking after, say, about 10 really good drivers, or Bobby Morris was another one, we always made sure there was a car there. If we didn't win, at least there was a car in the vicinity that may win. And hopefully, there were times like this Bob Morris one. One year he won Bathurst, and we didn't know whether we'd won or they'd won. But we got to the stage where the race was awarded to him, and that was it. But at least we had all the publicity ready, all the posters, and our advertising agency, which was George Patterson's, had all the videos made and everything else, and we didn't win. We come second, so you can imagine. That's why you always say Tirana won. You don't say the Holden dealer team Tirana won. You know?
Yeah, this was in the days when lap counting was done manually, not by electronic means.
Yeah. And it was a very arduous. Talk about volunteers. I feel sorry for the volunteers because we had that situation with timekeepers. In the old days, the timekeepers were if you had a couple of friends who were accountants or something like that, or some of the ladies who were very good with figures, you'd stick them on a truck all day at the bottom of Conrod Strait, and they'd have to go click, click. You know, Bond's gone past, Brocky's gone past, Peter Jensen's gone past, and then hope to Christ that it's all correct, and teed up with the official lap scoring. I mean, now it's all done electronically, which is a lot easier, you know. And like if you have somebody on a truck for 8 hours, and they've got to go to the toilet sometimes, especially if it's a cold day up at Bathurst. And you sort of say, where's you? There was one girl called Una who was very good, and I say, where's Una gone? Oh, she's gone to the toilet. You know, she's probably missed 10 laps. Anyway, it wasn't easy, but I appreciated what they did.
And Glenn Dix worked for the whole team for a while.
Glenn Dix came and volunteered with us and did lap scoring for us 3 years in a row, I think. He was very good because he was a guy who sat there with a lap board and
Didn't go to the toilet.
and no, he didn't go to the toilet. He was used to. I hope he didn't do it in the pits because I was in the pits. But no, he was very good because he was that sort of guy who was
Very particular man.
very meticulous and very particular, and very good. And he's very good with the flag too. You all know Glenn Dix too? Yeah. You all know Dix. He used to make me laugh with that flag waving. Very
Yes, he
good.
had a style of his own. Now, how did pardon me. How did the Holden dealer team come about? Did you get to a stage where you had to legitimise it and bring in dealers that were visibly contributing money to the cause?
No, what happened, originally there was another branch called the Holden Dealer Racing Team. And for those of you who are old-time enthusiasts, this was in about 68. And that was a splinter group of our dealers who were motor racing buffs. We had a lot of dealers, obviously, like Bob Jane, Reg Hunt, Biff Stall. They were all Holden dealers who motor raced. And that's how they became famous, and then they became dealers. So there was a group of Sydney dealers, and we just brought out the Monaro, the Holden Monaro, and there was a group of Sydney dealers who wanted to race some Monaros, and they called themselves the Holden Dealer Racing Team, as against what we became was the Holden Dealer Team. And the bloke who owned them was a motor journo from the Sunday Telegraph in David Mackay. Do you know David Mackay?
Yes.
Yeah. David Mackay owned Scuderia Veloci, and he had this group doing the Bathurst thing. And they did all right. They finished in the top 10, and it was their first effort. But David was very hard to deal with, and he was a bloody prima donna, quite frankly. Those of you who knew him, I don't know. Hope you're not related to him.
We've heard Spencer Martin speak about him.
Yeah, but he's gone to God now, unfortunately. But he was a very hard man to deal with. Anyway, we decided at one stage, we thought, this is enough, we're going to do our own thing, and the whole thing came into the factory, and we took it over ourselves. And that was John Bagshaw was the boss in those days, and he said, bugger this, we're not going to deal with anyone else, we're going to do it ourselves. And I was in engineering department in those days, and I was a motorsport enthusiast, and I got picked out by John Bagshaw and given the job of Holden's motorsport manager, which sounds good, and it was great when you won, but when you lost, Jesus, the holes in your back. Everybody used to come and stab you in the back and say, we shouldn't be in motorsport. And when we won, they're all there, any free wine, you know.
Yes, win on Sunday and sell on Monday.
Yeah, that was true.
So you left General Motors to set up the Holden dealer team? Or
I
were you?
didn't leave General Motors, no. I was still working at General Motors. I worked for General Motors for 42 years, would you believe? No, I just moved from one department to another. Engineering department was one department, obviously, but John Bagshaw was director of marketing, sales and marketing, and I went over to his department, which motor racing came under. Well, motorsport, not motor racing.
So even though you weren't in engineering, you could still get the shonky parts made?
Oh yeah. I learned a lot of new technologies. The classic one, when I met Harry Firth, I'll tell you about that. The classic one was fettling. Harry said, you got any drawings from your foundry? We had a big foundry at General Motors. We used to cast all the blocks and cylinder heads and everything else. And I said, yeah. He said, can you get some drawings? And on all the I don't know whether any of you worked in a foundry, but all the drawings have got a word fettling on it. Now fettling means removing all the dags when you cast a block or a cylinder head. They come out with all dags on them. So we turned that into porting and polishing. And the scrutineers used to come up to me and say, what's been done there? Nothing. That's fettling. They'd shut their eyes if they liked us. If Moffat was there, he'd phone me.
And what was it like working with Harry Firth?
It was different. I did 10 years with old Harry. Look, Harry's dead now, but so I don't want to speak ill of the dead. But those of you who knew him, he was a brilliant engineer. For his time, he was brilliant. And he could do anything with anything. The biggest problem I had with Harry, I was also responsible for the appearance of the team. The appearance of the cars, right? We had to sell cars off it, and later on, which we'll talk about, we joined up with Philip Morris, who were really looking for exposure. By then, cigarette advertising was being banned, and the only way they could get on television was to have it on the cars. We had Marlboro all over the cars. We chose Marlboro because they were red and white, and we were red and white, whereas Rothmans were blue and white, so they went to forward. But with Harry used to get me very frustrated because, like, the cars always looked bad. The cars went well, and they won races. And when I used to say to him, because the directors of Philip Morris and our directors used to complain, oh, the cars look like crap. And I'd say, for Christ's sake, Harry, the cars look like bloody crap. I said worse than that, but I won't say it because of the lady. And he'd say, Harry, I don't know how many of you knew him, but he called everyone cock. I don't know whether it was a World War saying, because he was in the army in Egypt, you know, and everybody was cock. Yeah. And he'd say, listen, cock, do you want to win races or do you want to win beauty contests? He'd have me stuffed, you know. I said, well, we've got to win races, but, you know. But that was Harry. Like, no, this is no bull dust. With Harry, if he had to put a cable through the firewall, he wouldn't worry about drilling a hole and putting a grommet on it. He'd get a bloody screwdriver and go bang. Yet he won Bathurst heaps of times, around the world's rallies and everything else. He was a brilliant engineer, but a terrible, like, his sorry? Presentation wasn't good. And of course we're putting a lot of money in, and so were Philip Morris. Well, Philip Morris were putting a big dollar, and for those days especially, yeah, they were putting money like people get these days. And they had a Formula One team, and like they had uniforms, they had everything. Anyway, what I did in the end, I stopped Harry being involved. I stopped Harry being involved in organising the cars, and I got our styling department to come up with a colour scheme. Because like at one stage we had a green Tirana, a yellow Tirana, an orange Tirana, and a bloody pink one even. We had a pink Tirana range with stickers all over it, TAA and Levi and Christ knows who, you know. But we stopped all that, and we got styling to come up with the red and white livery that we had since '72, and got all the mechanics into red uniforms and all the drivers into red driving suits and red helmets and everything else. So it became a lot easier once we let Harry not do it.
You also worked with Peter Brock.
Yep.
Was he easy to work with?
Look, Peter was a lovely guy. Harry actually found Peter driving the A30, a little Austin A30. Did you guys know about that A30? Ever seen it? Yeah. Oh, you still drive it, do you? Yeah. Well, for those of you who didn't know, it had the motor sitting next to the driver. Like, Brocky used to rest his arm on the bloody, on the rocker cover. You know, if it ever blew up, he was gone. What's it like now?
Different. It's different. Yeah.
Yeah. No, but coming back to Peter, Peter was a lovely guy. He was a terrific driver. We all know he won 9 Bathursts, and that ain't easy. He won one of them, the second last one, I think. He won by 6 laps. Now, bear in mind, Bathurst is usually won by about 3 minutes, maybe, or even 3 seconds. You know, he won that and broke the lap record on the last lap of the day. And you know, not just broke the lap record, just shattered it. After we told him, because he wanted to do it the year before, and we wouldn't let him from the pits. We're saying, no, just limp home. It doesn't matter. You know, we've won it. You're 4 laps in front. He goes out and bloody 6 laps in front and breaks the lap record. Unbelievable. But no, look, he was a lovely guy, terrific promoter, terrific driver. He was the best driver I've ever had anything to do with. But he was a terrible businessman, unfortunately. And we all know his history. I tried to get him into a dealership, a country dealership. Yeah, obviously he'd had no business experience, so you couldn't put him into a metro dealership. So we looked at maybe somewhere like in Melbourne, Ballarat or somewhere like that, you know. Well, when I put it to him, I said, now Peter, you know, you're getting older, you're going to have to retire. You know, look at Bob Jones, look at Bib Stillwell, look at Reg Hunt, they're all multi-millionaires. They all started in motor racing and became dealers. He said, what, I'd have to go to work every day? I said, yeah. I said, you'll have to go to work at 7 o'clock in the morning to meet all your service customers and then go home probably 7 o'clock at night. He said, oh, bugger that. Just give me $100 and use my name. No, Peter, it doesn't work like that.
He had the assistance of a outside manager for a while there, before the chiropractor, but
yeah, look,
that way.
You've probably heard, well, it's all over, it's on the TV everywhere, that I actually sacked Peter Brock, and he was my best mate at one stage. We used to, in the early days, we always used to share a room and a motel room together. I mean, later on he preferred women to me. I don't blame him. But I used to go there because, quite frankly, number one, we didn't have a lot of accommodation at Bathurst. You know, we'd be lucky to have 4 rooms for the whole team. There was only one motel, the old Bathurst Motor Lodge. I mean, now there's motels everywhere. But I used to sort of worry about him because he was so calm and collected. The day of the race, like he'd be on pole, and the day of the race, he'd be in his underpants, reading the paper, having a cigarette and a cup of tea. And I'd say, Peter, where's your driving suit? Oh, I don't know, it's around here somewhere. You know, where's your helmet? Oh, I might have given that to Tatey. Yeah. And it was so casual, but he never missed a race, and he never sort of missed a time or anything else, but he was just a casual person. But unfortunately, you're talking about what happened, and it was half our fault, ours and Channel 7's fault. Peter finished up marrying a girl called Michelle Downs, who was Miss Australia. He was the Australian touring car champion, and she was Miss Australia and the Channel 7 weather girl. And of course, it was a marriage for us. It was a marriage made in heaven because we saw the publicity and everything else. And I lent him a Chev Corvette to go on his honeymoon with her and everything else. And but unfortunately, she was used to television. We were the motor car company. We did everything directly. Like I used to ring Peter. We had, just to explain to you, we had 2 contracts with the drivers. The drivers had a contract with us to do promotions and advertising and things like that, like going to motor shows, going to dealer openings and advertising new products, etc. And they had a driving contract with Harry Firth because we weren't allowed to have racing drivers. So what we used to do, we used to pay Harry Firth and he'd pay the drivers. So that's the way it sort of worked. It was a roundabout way of doing it. But Michelle had being in television, she had a manager, and the manager was an old private detective who was involved in the police inquiry at the time. And then when Peter won the Australian Touring Car Championship, he took Peter on himself. He wanted Peter to go with him. Probably saw it as more money, but then he didn't want Peter to deal with us directly anymore, which we weren't having that. I mean, we had a contract with him and we said, he either fulfills it or we're not having it. Anyway, I went and saw my boss, who's John Bagshaw, and I told him the situation. He said, what do you want to do? I said, well, he's either got to get rid of this guy or we're going to have to let him go and get another driver. And there wasn't too many Peter Brocks around, I tell you. Anyway, I put it to him. I said, Peter, you've either got to get rid of him and deal with us directly, as it was for 10 years, or you're going to have to go. And he said, oh, no, I want to stick with him. He's got big plans. I said, yeah, well, that's it. So we let him go. I pulled his contract and I got Harry to pull his driver's contract. Now, bear in mind, we could do that because we were actually paying Harry to pay the drivers. So it was something you could do. But yeah, so he went off and became a privateer, but unfortunately, his marriage broke up then, which, you know, was bad luck. But he also had no money. And, you know, it's all very well, you know, like motor racing, as most of you in here would know, is akin to shoveling $50 notes into the fire on a winter's day, you know. Like, you need a lot of money. And these guys used to think, oh, no, we'll go off and do it ourselves. Okay, away you go. They're back in a month later, 6 months later, hoping to get back in the team, which you really, you know, if you'd put someone else on, you couldn't put them back on. Anyhow, that was the situation with Peter.
Yeah, so Peter had to go, and Harry was he survived a bit longer, but he ran his course as well.
Yeah, because of this business with Harry, because look, as I say, Harry was a great engineer, but a bloody grub. like if you go to his workshop was in Auburn, you'll probably all know. And like if I had to take someone there, an American there from Detroit or something, I'd ring him up and say, Harry, for Christ's sake, can you clean the place up a bit? You know, these guys were guys who were used to Foyt and people like that, and, you know, magic workshops. And we'd go there, and he didn't even have a table. We'd sit on bloody tyres, wheels and tyres. And I'll set up tyres, and the floor was with grease and oil everywhere.
Just hold that microphone up. Yep.
The floor had grease and oil everywhere, and I used to hate it. So anyway, in the end, everybody was complaining about the state of the cars, and the last straw. We're at Sandown one time. We were racing at Sandown, and Peter had someone had shunted him on the door, on the passenger door. And come race day, next morning, and Philip Morris were doing a big promotion. They had the stand at Sandown. They had half the stand, people and half the guests and half the stand. And all looking at the Marlborough sign, the bloody car comes out, and all it's got is MARL. And the bloody rest of it had been scraped off when they had the bingle. And of course the managing director of Philip Morris was there, a bloke called Ham Hurley, and he said to me, "What? What am I seeing? I can't believe it. That's not our name. We're not Marlborough." And I thought, well, there goes our contract with Philip Morris. But anyway, I said to Harry, that's it. I said, I want you to retire. Well, first of all, I said, I'd like you to leave. He said, I'm not leaving. And look, the guy had done so much for our products over the years. Bear in mind, he was there from 1969, you know, when we won the first Bathurst with the Monaro. And he said, I'm not going. And I said, Harry, you've got to go. You know, I said, we've got problems with the way the cars are looking. Philip Morris has got problems. Anyway, he said, no, I ain't going. Anyway, in the end, I managed to talk him into retiring, so he retired. Thank goodness.
Now, just another person that you worked with Colin Bond as well, and I think you were telling at one time that Colin's wife felt at one stage that Peter was getting the better car.
Yep.
And so you had to change the numbers around, and so he thought he was driving his car, but he was actually driving the one that Peter drove, and he wasn't quite as quick. Is that how it worked? That's
true. Look, Colin Bond was a great all-round driver. He won the Rally Championship, the Australian Rally Championship a couple of times, and he won Bathurst in '69. And, you know, he won the Touring Car Championship one year too. But he wasn't a Peter Brock. Peter was always quicker than him in practice. He was always quicker than him in the race. Robin, his wife, Colin Bond's wife, was a real stirrer, if you like, for want of a better word. She was always complaining. She reckons we used to we all liked Peter Brock better because he was from Victoria and Colin was from Sydney, and we give him all the good bits and all the good tyres and everything else, which was a lot of rubbish. The cars were identical. I mean, there was any differences were because the driver wanted something different. Anyway, I got to the stage, she complained that much. I said to Harry, we've got to do something about this. This is going to make the irrits. Because she'd come up to me and she'd come. We used to rent a double-decker bus from Peter Jansen for all the race meetings and put all our VIPs in there, like the directors and Christ knows what. And she'd go up on the bus and she'd be complaining to everybody, you know. Anyway, in the end, I got Harry to swap the numbers on the cars, and the cars were identical. You couldn't tell them apart. Swap the car, and Peter was still faster. You know, he was just a faster driver, and that's all it was to it. I'm not saying he was a better driver or he was a worse driver, but he was a faster driver.
And where do you reckon John Harvey fitted into the scheme of things?
Look, John was a bloody good driver too. He was a good open-wheeler driver, but he wasn't as fast as, say, Peter Brock, Alan Moffat, and even probably Alan Grice. John Harvey was sort of in that other bracket. If say Brocky was an A+, he was an A.
Right. Yep.
So you know, gives you an idea of.
And because we've got this car on the stage here.
Yep.
What about Peter Jansen? Could he drive?
Peter Jansen, everybody, any of you know Peter Jansen? Yeah. Now, everybody thinks, I hear you laughing, and I appreciate why you're laughing, but let me tell you this, Peter Jansen, everyone thought he was a bloody a rogue and a court jester, but he was a bloody good driver. I don't know if any of you have ever looked at his record. He finished in the top 10 at Bathurst 6 times, you know, and one time he should have won it. Only his diff carrier let go, the tension on the diff bolts let go, and he dropped all his oil on about 6 laps to go, and he was a mile in front. You know, he was well in front. Our car had broken down, so he was a bloody good driver, and he was a good rally driver too. You know, you got to understand, he was a bit eccentric. In fact, he was a lot eccentric. Just one little thing he used to do, and I don't know, hope there's no undertakers here, but when he was on a rally, his navigator used to tell me, they'd be on a country rally around Victoria or wherever, or the Alpine somewhere, and he'd say, we'd go past an old graveyard, and Jansen would pull up. He used to say tombstones that were over 100 years old. And he'd get out and there'd be some old gravestone that was, you know, 200 years old, and he'd be pulling it out. And I couldn't believe it when they told me. I said, don't tell me, for Christ's sake, don't tell me. I don't want to know. But he was a good businessman. Unlike Peter was a good driver, good promoter, but not a good businessman. Peter Jansen was a good businessman. He was into everything. You know, we all know the story. He lived in the Windsor Hotel for ages, and we all used to go up there every Friday night, and there'd be Bob, who was the ex-Prime Minister? Bob Hawke. Bob Hawke would be there. We'd all be playing pool up there. Peter Jansen had one of the first pool tables around. You know. On Friday nights we'd all go there. So he knew everybody, and we could use his place to have meetings and meet with the unions or anything else, you know, which was great.
Now, Peter Jansen had some connection with this car that's behind us here that Larry has brought along.
Yeah.
Larry.
Yeah, this car is probably the oldest history car around. It was one of our cars originally. It was one of our old rally cars. It's rally crossed. Then it went, I gave it to Peter Jansen for some work. Just incidentally, you might say, why would you give him that? Peter Jansen was the guy that got us to deal with Philip Morris. He's the one that brokered the deal. He used to do work for Philip Morris, and he came to me one day and said, I reckon I can get you sponsorship from Philip Morris. And I said, oh yeah, can you? Well, we had TAA, Levi's, Castrol and a few others. But I said, oh, well, we're always interested in sponsorship, because we've got to keep telling people that we're using sponsorship money, not General Motors money, which was all bullshit, of course. Anyway, and he said, look, I can do it. And sure enough, I give him his dues. I met up with the Philip Morris people, and we brokered a deal where they became our major sponsor. And all our cars were written with Marlboro all over them. So he was good. He knew what he was doing.
So you gave him the car?
I gave him the car, and then eventually he rally crossed it, did everything with it, and circuit raced it. And then eventually it went to a bloke called Bruce Watt. It came back to Harry's, and a bloke called Bruce Watt bought it. That's the name on the windscreen now. And he turned it into a sports sedan, which, a 6-cylinder sports sedan. It's supercharged. It's quite a neat machine. Larry, who now owns it, where is he, Larry?
He's in the back
Oh, down the back, there he is. Larry owns it, and he races it now. He still races it now. He was at Malala the other day. That's right, Larry, isn't it?
That's it. He's nodding.
You're nodding.
He's getting tired.
Yes, yeah. Larry drives from here to Narracourt every day, there and back, on a mail run. So he's allowed to get tired. But yeah, that car has done more miles. Unfortunately, it's now getting to the stage where Larry's being very careful with it. Being very careful. Oh, it's gone on. It's a flat battery. Yeah. Larry's being very careful with it because it's an old car and it's had a hard life, and he's got to be careful with it, you know.
Larry's always careful.
Yeah, but nothing serious. We don't want anything serious. We don't want to lose that car. It's a real historic car. You know, in Australian motorsport, it's a historic motor car.
Now, is Saggy Sarah married, or
Oh,
where did the name come from?
they nicknamed this car Saggy Sarah because she was sagging all over the place back in the days. But it's just a name Peter Jensen cloned for it, Saggy Sarah. But it's worth having a look at.
I'd like to make a point of thanking Larry for bringing it down. We haven't heard the story yet, but we spoke some time ago over the phone, and he said, well, I can bring it down Tuesday night. That's the best thing for me than Wednesday because of whatever. Anyway, down here at bloody 8:30 last night, and I thought, geez, I'm an idiot. What am I doing here? But he towed the car after he'd done his run to Mount Gambier and back. He went home, loaded it all up and brought the car down from Salisbury. So there's a fair effort. People see the cars and think, oh, yeah, that's nice to have that, but huge effort.
Incidentally, we reckon Larry's Peter Jensen's son. we always said that furry face 1 and furry face 2. Great guy, Larry.
Yes, he told me that last night.
Yeah. Anything else you like?
Yeah, so how did it survive after all that stuff? And I mean, and that car would be worth a fair bit of money these days.
Yeah.
Not that that's the point of the exercise. I think Larry's had it for 17 years. Is that right? Yep. No worries.
Yeah, no, and look, I don't want to see it go either because it is a very historic motor car. We had a Formula 5000 car, which was an interim car, and I got a few complaints from Philip Morris that they weren't getting exposure over in Perth. So I sent that over to Wayne Negus over in Perth. You might have seen there was a race one day and Brock won it. John Harvey was second and Wayne Negus was third. Well, that was in the 5000 car, which was an SLR 500.
Oh, okay. Wasn't a Formula?
No, not a Formula.
No. Okay, look, very entertaining.
Yes.
It's only because the question's really good. However, is there anyone that would like to ask a pertinent question? Mr. Cook.
Where did John Shepherd come in?
Okay.
And what was the transition like?
Okay, look, what happened there, when I asked Harry to retire, he eventually agreed to retire, not very happily, I might add. He called me a few names, but anyway. So we had to get another manager for the whole dealer team to prepare the cars. We put out an ad for anyone who was interested and was capable, and it finished up down to 2 people, Frank Gardner and John Shepherd. Now, those of you who don't know John, he used to do all Bob Jane's car, and he did not Leo Gagan's. Leo wasn't the better driver, Pete Gagan's car. He did all Pete Gagan's cars and all Bob Jane's cars. He built them all. So Frank Gardner wanted to operate out of Sydney, and John Shepherd was here in Melbourne. Both Holden and Philip Morris were in Melbourne, so we decided we'd keep it in Melbourne, so John Shepherd got the nod. There was really nothing between the two of them. But what a difference it made. Like, the workshop was brilliant, you could eat your lunch off it. The cars were magnificent, they always looked great. And, my life was so much easier with John Shepherd than Harry. I used to have to fight Harry every week.
Yeah. Steve?
I've been waiting to ask this question for about 10 years. Did the Holden dealer team, or as the group that you were running, take any input or observation from the Alec Mildren racing team that was running Alfa Romeos in the front running in 1965, 66 and 67 when they came third and fourth at that?
Look, we didn't really, because we were a different car to the European cars, you know. He had a very good operation and a very good outfit, but we sort of did our own thing pretty much. It was really Australia, and we stuck with it, you know, with our cars, and we didn't have much to do with the European cars in those days.
Good question. Jim?
Incidentally, thank you so much for giving up your time tonight.
It's all right.
I found it really wonderful.
Thank you.
I was lucky enough in 1986 to buy a Holden dealer team car.
Right.
It wasn't what you see there. It was a car that was called HDT from Brocky, or through the Holden dealer team, but it was John Harvey that was running it in those days.
Yeah.
Now, at that time, there was a delay in delivering my car, and I have no idea why.
This was a new car?
Brand new car.
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
the BL Group A that just
Right.
came
Oh,
out,
yeah, okay.
which led to the sacking of Brocky
Because of the polariser?
because of the bloody polariser. Yeah. And
Yeah,
so
that was the second time he got sacked from
Well, I was just
polariser.
when you told me he got sacked the first time, I couldn't understand. I was like, how the hell did he get back here? Because I know he got sacked the second time.
No, well, yeah, that was the second time we sacked him, and to be honest with you, I tried so hard to get him to not take on General Motors about the polariser, and the other thing was he called one of the cars he
The
produced
director.
was the director.
Yeah.
Now, General Motors wouldn't allow that word, the director,
Yeah.
and also they wouldn't allow the polariser to put in new cars because of the warranty. I sent a polariser to America, to engineering in America, GM Engineering, and to check out the polariser, and they said it was nothing in it. It was like those salt bloody things, you know, they have crystals. They have.
Yeah, but hang on, did you send the rear badge? The rear sticker? Apparently that's how it worked.
Look, honestly, I ranked. Now, I was no longer in that. After 10 years, I moved on. I actually came over here for a while to South Australia, to Elizabeth. But I rang Peter. They asked me to ring him because everybody loved Peter. You know, we didn't want to part with him. But it all got too hard. I mean, the company's saying to him, Peter, you can't, we're not going to cover bloody polarisers on warranty, and you can't call your car the director. It's no longer a model, a General Motors model. And he said, I'm going to call it the director, and I'm going to do this. And the General Motors said, get stuffed.
So how did Brocky become the owner of the HDT? I mean,
It was sold. It was, well, when I say sold to him, it was virtually given to him because we wanted the company. It got too hot, and in the end, we wanted to get it. Well, not me, but the company top management wanted to get out of motor racing altogether. So we thought the best way to do it was to get Peter to buy it and run it himself, which he did, but he wasn't successful. And later on, Walkinshaw got involved and became the HRT, Holden Racing Team.
Yeah, and also the HSB as well.
Well, HSV were always there. HSV cars were actually a part of the normal Holden,
Yeah.
but it was a top model and sporty models. But it wasn't, we didn't race the HSVs per se. I mean, the race cars were race cars.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the Commodore came out and we went to Commodores. Any other questions?
No, all right.
All right, that's it.
We'll wind it up. Thank you very, very much, Joe. It's been lovely to... does this mean I'll speak twice as much? We have a small gift, a token of our appreciation, but thank you for...